from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Saturday, the 14th of November, 2014. I am Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. Israel allows men of all ages into Al-Aqsa Mosque as Israel and the Palestinians pledge to calm tensions in Jerusalem. The U.S. concludes a third round of strikes against Al-Qaeda as Obama seeks new anti-IS strategy in Syria. The Houthi group endorses the new Yemeni government despite opposition to some ministers. Burkina Faso's army reaches an agreement with opposition parties and other groups for a transition to civilian rule. Hello and welcome. Palestinian protesters clashed with Israeli troops today at a West Bank checkpoint as prayers in Jerusalem proceeded without incident following weeks of tension surrounding a key holy site. As Palestinians burned tires and threw stones at security forces, some 40,000 people attended prayers at Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, which has been at the heart of recent tensions plaguing Jerusalem. The clashes came as Israel allowed men of all ages into Jerusalem's holy site, a decision linked to agreements reached during talks between Israel and the U.S. and Jordan in Amman. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry said that Israel and the Palestinians have pledged to take concrete steps to calm tensions around Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque. After talks in the Jordanian capital Amman, Kerry declined to specify what steps the parties had agreed to take, but said that Israel, Jordan, and the Palestinians had all pledges to work to calm the situation. Our correspondent in Ramallah, Fatima Abdul Karim, has the story in the following report.
The Israeli Prime Minister pledged to take concrete steps to calm the tension in and around Jerusalem and its holiest site in a deal brokered by Jordan and the U.S. after talks in the Jordanian capital Amman last night, where the U.S. State Secretary John Kerry announced that all parties have agreed to take practical steps to restore calm.
Prime Minister Netanyahu strongly reaffirmed Israel's commitment to uphold the status quo on the Haram al-Sharif, Temple Mount, and to implement these steps. And King Abdullah also agreed to continue to take affirmative steps to restore calm and implement practical measures to prevent further escalation of tensions.
Jordan, the custodian of the holy Islamic site in Jerusalem, was working intensely to maintain status quo at Al-Aqsa Mosque, while Israel was trying to divide it in time and space between Muslims and Jews.
The tension in Jerusalem, as you have seen in the last few days, has sparked tension not just in Jerusalem and around Jerusalem, but elsewhere in the West Bank, and this is something that concerns us all.
The Palestinians have not yet issued a public statement on this matter, but several officials expressed their relief at the initiation of calming the nationwide unrest caused by the Israeli restrictions in the Holy Aqsa Mosque recently and the latest Israeli provocations by the Jewish settlers who have flared up the tense situation by continued incursions of the holy site.
What matters about this agreement is its actual implementation, with an Israeli commitment to restore calm to Jerusalem and stopping Israeli measures in Judaization of the holy Islamic and Christian sites.
For the tensions to diffuse across the Palestinian territories, Israel must stop all forms of provocations, particularly targeting Jerusalemites, with more land confiscations, settlement activities and closures at least. Fatma Abdul Karim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Thank you, Fatma. U.S. officials said that U.S. aircraft have concluded a third round of strikes against Al-Qaeda cell inside Syria. The official said it was a small number of strikes and that the targets included at least one top operative of what is known as the Khorasan group. They added that the group has suffered setbacks as a result of the strikes, which have killed a number of fighters and forced the rest to spread out. Those attacks came amid intelligence that suggested the group was plotting against the target in the U.S. homeland as well as other Western targets. These strikes came as U.S. President Barack Obama has asked his national security team for another review of the U.S. policy towards Syria after realizing that the Islamic State militants may not be defeated without a political tension transition in Syria and the removal of President Bashar al-Assad. At least 3 Lebanese soldiers were injured in a bomb explosion today in the town of Arsal near the Syrian border. The military said the bomb was detonated remotely and hit an army vehicle in an area close to the border town, but no group has yet claimed responsibility for the attack. After the blast, the unidentified gunmen on the outskirts of Arsal opened fire on the troops who shot back. Lebanon has been rocked by the spillover of the conflict in Syria, where the IS terrorists are operating with Arsal and surrounding areas, witnessing clashes between Lebanese soldiers and the militants. In Yemen, the Houthi group endorsed the new Yemeni government despite opposition to some ministers in a move that could allow Prime Minister Khaled Bahbah to focus on restoring state control over the country. Yemen has been in turmoil since Houthi fighters captured the capital Sana'a in September and forced the government of Prime Minister Mohammed Bassandwa to resign earlier. The political bureau of the Houthis has criticized the 36-member cabinet announced last week by President Abdurrabbu Mansour Hadi as disappointing and said some ministers did not meet the requirements stipulated by the power-sharing agreement signed after the capture of Sana'a. However, the group praised Bahah and welcomed the new cabinet while maintaining reservations about some ministers. Nearly 2 weeks after the ouster of President Belize Compaoré, Burkina Faso's military leadership announced it had reached an agreement with opposition parties as well as civil and religious leaders to transition to civilian rule. The president of the commission representing the differing factions in Burkina Faso said the various factions unanimously voted for the transition charter that will return the small West African nation to civilian rule and provide for elections late next year. According to the agreement, a special electoral college will choose an interim civilian president who in turn will appoint a prime minister to head a 25-member transitional government. The charter also provides for a civilian to head a 90-seat parliament known as the National Transitional Council. According to the transition plan, no members of the interim government will be allowed to stand in the next elections. Hong Kong student leaders plan to fly to Beijing tomorrow in a try to meet China's top officials to press their case for a greater say in choosing the territory's next leader. Secretary General of the Hong Kong Federation of Students, Alex Chow, said that if officials still reject their students' voice, it would send a message that the Beijing government would not respect Hong Kong people in the coming future. The students have already asked the Hong Kong government officials as well as former leader Tung Chee-cho to arrange a meeting, but their requests have been rejected. The protesters have been occupying streets in 3 areas of Hong Kong to oppose Beijing's decision that a panel is to screen candidates for the territory's inaugural 2017 elections. U.S. President Barack Obama told young Southeast Asians today that they had the potential to bring about change in Myanmar during a town hall meeting in Yangon. On his visit, prompted by economic summits in the capital, Obama has faced profound concerns by Myanmar's citizens that its transition to democracy is backsliding. He told the audience of young people that the U.S. still has major concerns over some aspects of reform in the country. But the American leader was betting on the country and the region.
There are still attacks against journalists and against ethnic minorities. America is still deeply concerned about the humanitarian situation in Rakhine State and the treatment of minorities who endure discrimination and abuse. On this visit, I've met separately with President Thein Sein and Daw Aung San Suu Kyi, as well as members of parliament and civil society leaders, and we discussed key reforms that have to be made to ensure that human rights and freedom are respected and the people of this country can reach for their rightful place in the region and the world.
World leaders continue to arrive in Australia's Brisbane today ahead of this weekend's G20 summit. The two-day summit, to be attended by the US, Chinese and Russian leaders, among others, will focus on promoting growth. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott said the leaders would discuss job creation and strengthening the global economy. Tensions with Russia over Ukraine will also draw attention, while campaigners want climate change on the agenda. Meanwhile, hundreds of protesters marched through Brisbane using the spotlight on the G20 to highlight the mistreatment of Indigenous Australians who are in police custody. As part of the celebrations of the Embassy of the French Republic in the State of Kuwait for the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries, the Euro Gulf Research Unit at the College of Social Sciences in Kuwait University had teamed up with the Embassy and Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Sciences in organizing an academic conference that brought together a number of specialists in the political, economic, social, and cultural fields to exchange views and discuss experiences in the past, present, and the future. Here's more on the conference in this report by Salim Al-Kandari.
With the support and attendance of His Excellency the French Ambassador to Kuwait, Mr. Christian Nakhle, and President of Kuwait University, Professor Abdul Latif Al-Badr, and a number of university officials, specialists, and members of the diplomatic missions from the embassies of European and Gulf states, the conference was held to mark the anniversary of 50 years of strong relations between Kuwait and France.
The conference, the academic conference today comes in as a part of 2 months of events organized by the Embassy of France, and these events were art, music, historical, some with the military, some other events just cultural exchange. So this is the only event that is academic that came with some visitors, very highly known professors from France, and they will be talking in 2 of the sessions today about some cultural aspects of the relationship, the diplomatic relationships between France and Kuwait that has like 50 years now in history. We will have 2 sessions. The first one talks about the geopolitical approaches between France and Kuwait, and the second session is more like social and cultural. They're going to be talking about women issues, work, labor, translation efforts between the 2 publications, and we have like 3 speakers from Kuwait and 2 from France. So it should be rich in content and rich in fruitful in the outcome of it.
Really, I'm very happy to be here, and Kuwait University is very happy to have His Excellency the Ambassador of France at Kuwait University. And because Kuwait and France had been together for 50 years, with the relationship between the two countries began 50 years ago, and I really hope it will continue for the best. Because I think France is from the academic part, is extremely advanced for several hundred years. So we are very fortunate to have them, to have such a close relation with the embassy and with the Republic of France. And we hope it will continue in such a fashion that by giving scholarship to our students and to encourage students from France to come here, and also to encourage as much as possible research between the two countries. As Dr. Adnan Shahabuddin has said in the event, by stating Kuwait Foundation, he is in charge of Kuwait Foundation for the Advancement of Science. And as our president of the university, we really care a lot about having the close relationship between the two countries. And we are very happy to have His Excellency Christian Nakhle at Kuwait University.
The conference traced back the history of the relationships between the two nations in all fields, while discussing human rights, women labor, special needs, and translation issues. This conference included lectures on international relations and evolutions of both Kuwaiti and French societies over the past 50 years of diplomatic relations. From Kuwait University in Shuwaikh area, this is Salim Kendiri reporting for the English News.
Thank you, Salim. Clinical trials to try to find an effective treatment for Ebola patients are to start in West Africa next month. The medical charity Médecins Sans Frontières, which has been helping lead the fight against the virus, said that 3 of its treatment centers will host 3 separate research projects. Meanwhile, Liberia's President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has lifted the state of emergency imposed in the country as the weekly number of new infections is falling. Speaking during a nationwide address, Sirleaf said significant gains had been made in the fight against Ebola, prompting the government to make changes. And finally, under the patronage of the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, the NCCAL, the artistic exhibition, Iraqi Varieties, was inaugurated with huge attendance from enthusiastic and diplomatic corps in the country. Many Iraqi artists from different geographic regions of Iraq participated in the exhibition, representing diverse schools of art such as Surrealism and Figurative Surrealism, depicting the natural environment and social development of Iraq. Hiba Abdurrahman was there and has this report.
The National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters recently inaugurated an artistic exhibition which extended for over a week, showcasing trends in plastic art depicting the natural environment and social development of the various regions of Iraq. The Secretary General of the National Council for Culture, Arts and Letters, Ali Lyoha, said that the exhibition, which was held under the auspices of the Minister of Information and Minister of State for Youth Affairs, Sheikh Salman Subah Salim Mahmoud Subah, aims to familiarize the public with the Kuwaiti trends and schools of Iraq.
It's a beautiful exhibition, very colorful and cheerful paintings in its majority. I like them very much, and as ambassador of Germany, it's also an opportunity to honor the good relationship which we see today between Iraq and the State of Kuwait, and art is a wonderful expression of it. These cheerful paintings transport a kind of happiness we need in these days.
Well, this is the good example of the close relation between two countries. I heard that these days, thanks to the initiative by His Highness Amir, the two countries are getting closer. So I think this is the good example between the people-to-people exchange among the two countries and from the grassroots.
The exhibition includes works by artists from different schools of fine surrealism and figurative realism, and who have made works depicting the natural environment and social development in different regions of Iraq. Al-Yuha said that he wishes that this exhibition would give the opportunity to take place once again with the Iraqi artists and their Kuwaiti counterparts, and more exhibitions and artistic exchanges between the two countries.
Very, very delighted to be here. My colleague told me this exhibition from Iraq artist, you know, being a diplomat, Chinese diplomat, and also the ambassador to Kuwait. I am really very happy to know the Iraqi artist and has exhibition here, and I believe this is the good things, and this is a very good opportunity for Kuwaiti people, for Kuwaiti diplomatic corps to see the exhibition.
For his part, head of the delegation of the fine Iraqi artist, Ahmed Safar, expressed his happiness to set up a similar exhibition in Kuwait, noting that culture and the arts which bridge spanning between the sister countries, as the exhibition includes a variety of works to inform the public of Kuwait by Iraqi plastic art. The exhibition is considered a unique experience of its kind because it includes artists from all over Iraq representing a different and diverse geographic regions, as well as it confirms that there is no limit to the art, as art is a message of humanity and human culture, combines human and contribute to its development.
Arts are one of the most important fields that can help in strengthening and bolstering relations between countries. That's why we believe that this exhibition is a great opportunity to do the same between Kuwait and Iraq. From Ahmed Al-Udwani Hall in Abdullah Salim area, this is Heba Abdurrahman reporting for English News.
Thank you, Heba. For a chance to see our reports again, please visit our YouTube channel at MOI Kuwait News. And before we end, here is a quick reminder of today's headlines. Israel allows men of all ages into Al-Aqsa Mosque as Israel and the Palestinians pledge to calm tensions in Jerusalem. The U.S. concludes a third round of strikes against Al-Qaeda as Obama seeks new anti-IS strategy in Syria. The Houthi group endorses the new Yemeni government despite opposition to some ministers. Burkina Faso's army reaches an agreement with opposition parties and other groups for a transition to civilian rule.